Come on in, pull up a chair, and take a load off because today I'll be reviewing and sharing a bit of a how to play for vinyl from Talon Strikes Studios. So, did I fall to pieces over great gameplay, or will I recommend you make like a Rolling Stone and pass this game by? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back once again as your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, I'm going to be reviewing vinyl in just a moment. But first, I do want to remind you that if you like this video, by all means, be sure to give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't, and if you do subscribe, don't forget, ding that bell, because not only will it let you know when I upload videos such as this, it'll also tell you when my live stream, The Daily Dope, airs right here on YouTube, Monday through Thursday nights, as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. All right, as I mentioned, we are going to be taking a peek here at vinyl. I will mention that the cover artwork here I'm sharing is different than what's on the box because this is actually the cover for the new edition that was successfully kickstarted. So that is on the horizon. Plus, there's a two-player version of vinyl out there as well. So vinyl is from Talon Strikes Studios. It's designed by Eric Alvarado with art provided by Jason Washburn. The game is for 1 to 5 players, ages 10 and up, plays in around an hour, and it does carry an MSRP of $49.99. Do want to mention that I did receive this copy of vinyl as a review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other compensation for me to share my thoughts about the game with you. That said, let's swing on over to the other camera because I've got vinyl set up. First thing I will mention is that normally the game board would be vertical. It would be, so I actually have this sideways. Of course, I do have the albums and various different aspects turned so they are, the right way up at the moment here. But this takes up a bit of space. It does take up a little bit of space, and I wanted to try to squeeze everything in here so I can kind of tour the board, show you what's what, and get everything into the shot. So essentially, vinyl is a set collecting game. It's a hand management game. Each of the players are representing an audiophile who is collecting vinyl records. So they hang out at this place called Record Town to make their purchases of vintage vinyl. So essentially what you're trying to do is you're looking to score the most victory points in the game, and to do so, you're going to essentially purchase albums, you're going to create collections, and you're going to score those. So first off, these are our albums. This is considered the rows of the record store, Record Town, that you would be shopping in. So these are albums that are out right now. We actually have a sales bin as well. So we have some sale items available to us. We have a magazine rack, which is where we actually will receive our currency that we utilize to purchase these albums. Essentially, we're gathering knowledge from these magazines, and we're using that knowledge to pick cool albums and albums that would be valuable. We also have a layaway area here that we can actually take an album and put it on layaway. I'll explain how that works as well. And then when we actually take our collections and we retire them, essentially, what we do is kind of cash them in. We can also score our bonus points here from pure collections, mixed collections, and double mixed collections. We also have loyalty cards for Record Town, which are essentially bonus victory points. So we have some special goals that we can have as well. I got a kick out of it with this first player marker because I guarantee younger people will wonder, what in the world is that? Is that some sort of like symbol of the 1960s hippie culture? It's like, no, that's an insert that we used to have to put into 45 records because we had 33 and a third and we had 45s, and the 45s usually only had one song. The album, of course, rotated, spun faster. This is actually not to size, as I don't remember these being so big, but I thought that was kind of cool. Something I will mention is that all in all, the component quality is very, very nicely done. These cards all have a linen finish to them. We have some meeples that are going to represent our players. They are disco meeples. So it's kind of doing the good old John Travolta arm up in the air. We do have some guitars we can use as our player markers as well. But when I zoom in a little bit, I'll show you that you might not necessarily want to use these unless you paint them, or at least paint the bases to them, because nobody remembers what guitar they were. It's all just gray plastic here. All right, so that is the layout of the board here. We also have our bin of albums as well. This is kind of our timing mechanism here, because once these albums are gone, the store closes, the game ends, and we will tally up all of our victory points. So what you're going to do on your turn is you're going to take, for an example, I'm red. Let's say I'm the first player. So I've got this marker. This marker is mine. So I have an option. I can go to the sale bin. I don't know why I keep calling it sales bin. It's a sale bin. And I would put my meeple down on the bottom spot. And that allows me to spend my magazine cards to get one of these sale albums. And the sale albums basically are going to allow me to have one attribute fewer than what's on the album for me to be able to add it to a collection. And when I zoom in, I'll show you the different albums. I could conceivably go to the record bin, which will allow me to purchase any of these albums that are here in the record bins. Or I can also spend a card and put an album on layaway, which I will explain that when we zoom in a little bit. I could go to the magazine rack and take a couple of magazines that are face up, or I can take one face down from the deck here. There is a wild symbol that shows on these cards, on some of the cards. If I take a wild card that's face up, that's the only card I can take. I can only take one. Otherwise, I can choose two. Also want to point out, if I take a card that's face down and it happens to have a wild symbol on it, I still get to take a second card. So the only time that the wild symbol only allows you to take one card is if it's face up. We also have this area over here that's kind of interesting. It's for Masters of Metal, which I actually did receive the Masters of Metal expansion. There's also a British Invasion expansion that adds some new stuff to the game as well, like memorabilia. So it is kind of interesting that even all of the components for the other like expansions that are out there, like there's a publisher expansion we do actually have those components in the box. So here's the box here. I'm going to show you real quick inside, if I can get this open quickly enough. All right, come on, you. Because this has a really nice insert for everything here. Oops. So we've got the loyalty cards going here, and then on top of those go the magazine cards, and then the album cards, and it really, really well done little plastic insert. But you can see there's all these components in here, and these are for the British invasion as well as the Masters of Metal. So I thought that was kind of a nice extra. The rules are also included in the rule book as well. Speaking of the rule book, let me grab that real quick. It's relatively clear. Now, there are a couple of items that kind of throw people off. First of all, let me get rid of this for a second. Looking at this layout, just looking at this board and everything else, you'd think, wow, this is probably a pretty complex game. It's not. It is not a complex game at all. It's essentially, I am collecting cards to get various different icons that I can spend to pick up other cards that are going to score me victory points that I am then going to try to use to make a collection, which I will turn in to get more victory points. That's it. That's really all that's going on. Do also want to mention there is a solo component to this game. I did not play that. We played 3 and 4 players. Interestingly enough, I am showing you the 1 to 3 player board. If I flip it over, it's a 4 and 5 player board. So there's basically more room for albums and stuff. So going through, we've got loads of illustrations. Like I said, everything's pretty clear except for a couple of things. First off, these icons of what your actions represent aren't as intuitive as they could have been. So you have your player board here that is going to sit in front of you, and you're going to use this. You can put a layaway album here. You can only have one layaway album out at any time. This is where you're going to put your retired collections. So these are the collections you've completed, and you've scored more victory points with these tokens over here. And you can have up to 2 active collections at one time. And it shows you here exactly what you're able to do. But like I said, the iconography, it's just not as intuitive as I would have liked. So there's that. So there's that issue there. Other item that I do want to mention is that it's not all super clear about these mixed collections and double mixed collections. And the rules are right here for them. And there's still, reading it over and over again still does not necessarily make it any clearer. So I will get into the collections in just a moment. All right. Anyway, so back to some of our actions that we've got. So I can come here. I can pick up magazines. I can come over here. I can put an album on layaway, or I can trade in 2 loyalty cards for 2 new loyalty cards. And I have to discard 2 of them and put them on the bottom here. You can only ever have 2 loyalty cards. So, and they're essentially special goals that you're trying to attain. And they're kind of fun. And they really do add to the replayability of vinyl. All right. Here's one of the aspects of the game that I think is really cool. So as an example, let's say I'm the first player and I go here and I say, all right, I'm going to the magazine rack and I've been scoping out some of these albums that are over here So I think what I'm going to do is I am going to take country. So I'm going to take that. And once you remove a card, you're going to replace it. Yep, there we go. There's one of the wilds. And then I will take, what else can we grab here? Let's do, just for the heck of it. Doesn't matter. I'll take a mint. All right, so I got 70s and a mint. Boom, there you go. So there are 4 genres of music in this game. So we've got jazz, rock, country, pop. Of course, once again, we do have various different expansions that are out there. There's, I think the most recent is the big band era. I thought that, that's pretty cool. So one of the aspects I think is cool about this, because this gives me a sense of nostalgia. I bought records. I bought 45s. I hung out with friends in record stores. I hung out in record stores where collectors hung out. So this appeals to me. Now, some people out there, if you don't care about music or, you're like, whatever, vinyl sounds better on vinyl. Get out of here. This game may not hold as much appeal to you. One other aspect I think is pretty funny is some of the albums. And when I zoom in, I will show you what I'm talking about. So the aspect I think is pretty cool here is we have what's known as bump actions. So early on, nobody has anything to be able to get any of these albums. So of course, we're all going to go hang out at the magazine rack to pick up these knowledge cards. So I go here, I got my 2 cards, and then let's say blue player's next player, they decide they want to go to the magazine rack. So what they're going to do is they're going to bump me up here. They're going to go down here. They're going to take their 2 cards, or maybe they take the wild card. And that also allows me to take an action. So I get to take one of these bump actions here. So essentially what I can do is I can trade in loyalty cards, or I can take an additional magazine card. Kind of cool. So then let's say the third player says, hey, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing. So essentially they're going to bump me out of there. They're going to bump up the blue player here. They're going to go down here. And they get their 2 cards. And then the blue player gets to make their choice of what they're going to do. And it's kind of cool how we've got these little extra actions that you might have an opportunity to take later on. Now, it is possible that you're in a location that, let's say you went to layaway. Let's say I go to layaway and I want to put an album on layaway, which I can do by just simply using any card from my hand. And then nobody else goes to the front counter. Well, if that's the case, then I don't get a bump action. So I do like that. I think that is pretty cool how that happens. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to zoom in so we can take a look at some of these albums. I'll explain some of these albums and how we add them to our collections. There we go. All right, so as I mentioned, we have, and I'll just bring this up here so we can see it. We have 4 genres of music. We've got pop, we've got country, we've got rock, we got jazz. We have 3 decades. We've got the 50s, the 60s, as well as the 70s. We have mint condition albums. We have limited edition albums as well. This shows how many victory points is that album going to be worth at the end of the game. We have some other items as well. So we have L means it's late in that decade, so it's late 50s. E would mean it's early 60s here. Then we see here, and it'll say right there, early decade, late decade, just kind of giving you a breakdown. And then will have a symbol there as well as right here. That's going to be the record company. The reason why you have that is because in these loyalty cards, here's an example here. So you'll get 4 victory points for each pair of these two record companies, up to a maximum of 20. You get 2 victory points for every early decade. Doesn't have to be one decade, it's just with an E, max 20. 2 per retro. So we've got, here we go, for an example, 15 victory points, most albums in a single genre or band. 18 points if you've got the largest collection. So we've got a bunch of these loyalty cards that you're going to be able to utilize. And once again, like I said, you can only have maximum of 2. Okay. So you'll notice here that these are all like the same genres in a row. That's how it's recommended that you start off when you first learn how to play the game. Personally, I like just mixing it all up. I just like mixing it all up because you're going to have to come up with these different strategies, because with mixed and double mixed collections, you can't have the same genre in a row. So I'm going to give you an example of how you would go about with your collections. So I'm going to bring this out here. In fact, let's try to squeeze it in so we can kind of see this. Actually, it's the blue. Where's my red? So it matches up with me. There we go. Okay. So what's going to happen is you're going to use cards to add these to your collection. So as an example here, let's say I was really looking for this. Now it looks like, wow, that's a pretty good album. It's got, 8 victory points on it. It's a limited edition. It's from the 60s. It's country. It's in mint. So what I would need to have is I would need to have cards that represented all of these icons. Country, 60s, mint, limited edition. And then I could add it to my collection. I would have to be at the record bin, though. I would have to have my meeple over here at the record bin to take my action. So that's something to keep in mind, too. You can't just do it whenever you feel like it. You got to make sure that you send your little disco meeple over to that action, and then you get to perform that action. So simple enough. So as I mentioned before, you're going to spend time, you're going to be bopping up over to the magazine rack a lot so you can collect these various different cards so you can add these albums together. Let's talk a little bit about collections. So you can only have 2 active collections at one time. And you can have 3, 4, and 5 album collections. That's what these discs, these tokens here represent, right? So this is pure, and that would be 4. So that'd be a 4 album pure collection. What's a pure collection? Well, they're all going to be the same genre, and they're all going to share another attribute, which, interestingly enough, I actually have a 3 album collection right here sitting out in front of us, because they're all pop, they're all mint. Just kind of give you an idea. So we got mint, mint, mint. So what you would be doing is, let's say I added that card to my collection, and later on I add this card to my collection, and then I was able to add that card to my collection. And that's how you're going to line these up. When you're putting your collection together, you're going to line these up. Now, if I was doing a mixed collection, just as an example, I would have to do something like this. You cannot have the same genres right next to each other. that kind of threw people off. That's why I was mentioning when I showed you the rules, these mixed and double mixed collections can be a little confusing. So essentially what a mixed collection is you can have specific attributes that all match up. So for an example, this would be a better fit, right? So if I did something like this, whoops, no. Where is it? Here we go. That would be considered mixed. Anyway, so what you're going to do is you would end up taking your collection. Whoops, I'm putting them back the wrong way and in the wrong areas, but that's no big deal. So what you're going to do is you're going to make your collections, and then once you've got your collections, you're going to turn them in. So that's when you're going to, it's considered retiring them, and that's why you've got a little section here for retired collections. You take all your cards from that collection, you're just going to put them here, stack them up, keeping in mind that you will get victory points for those at the end of the game. So if you had this collection here, you'd be looking at 24 victory points for these albums alone, plus the additional that you would have for the counters here. Now, one thing that'll happen here is first person who turns in, say, a pure collection, they take this top one, 7 victory points. But you'll notice then they'll start dropping. So the earlier on that you get your collection turned in, the better. So it's essentially earlier is better, you'll score more points. So what happens as you're actually collecting these albums? Well, what happens then is, let's say I added that to my collection. So once I do that, I reach into the bin here and I actually will take out an album to replace it. Now, one of the aspects of this game I think is pretty funny is, so we've got that, right? So that's the album, the Stan Marcus Band. And the back of the card is actually the album cover. Now, the album cover is on the front of the card too, but I just think it's kind of cool how that album cover is there. So what's going to happen is you're going to keep basically going through these cards. As an example, right? If a sale card, let's zoom back out a little bit so I can show you the sale card area again. So when a sale card is added to somebody's collection, you're going to take that card and then you're going to shift all of these down. That's why you see there's an arrow here. And once again, the game board is supposed to be vertical, not horizontal. And then you would reach on in and put the next album out there. You're going to see we've got these little inserts where it says salesperson action. So it's essentially just kind of a bit of a cleanup, and it's moving you closer to the end. Once you've gone through these albums, you're going to get to store closing. Everybody gets a final turn, and that's it. You're going to score all your victory points to find out who is the victor. So, all in all, it is really how you play Vinyl. You go, you get albums, you try to make collections of those albums, you turn those albums in to pick up extra victory points. You also have the loyalty cards with some bonus goals for you to try to go after, which are only scored at the end of the game. And whoever's got the most victory points at the end is the winner. And that, in a nutshell, is Vinyl from Talon Strikes Studios. So let's swing back over to the other camera. I will share my final thoughts and give this a review score. I think you probably get the idea that I like vinyl. I even mentioned, I'm of the age that yes, I bought albums. I had records. I had 45s. I had a record player. So I kind of dig this. I used to hang out in record stores. So I really do like the aesthetics of the game as well. I got to point out, and you see it when we were taking a look at the whole game board, it is pretty busy. It is easy to kind of get lost in all that's going on that game board. And I also pointed out it makes things look like this is a much more complex game than it actually is. So so there is that, but I still think it looks really cool. I love how it's like, well, you could go to the magazine rack or you can go over to layaway. It's just pretty funny. It's just pretty wild. So I do like that. Once again, essentially boiled down to it, it's a pretty easy game. It's hand management, set collecting. Boom. You get the magazine cards so you can use those icons to purchase the albums, to add to your collections. You put the collections together to score more victory points. So you get the victory points for the albums, you get the victory points for the collections, and hopefully you get some victory points for those loyalty card goals that you've got. Very easy to wrap your head around all the aspects of the game. Once again, the iconography, like I said, is a little confusing. Some of it's just too similar. So, and even though we've got it on here, we've got it right here, it's still written really tiny what it does. So it is easy to kind of be a little confused on what your actions are going to do. But speaking of the actions, I like those bump actions. I think it's kind of cool that you go to one area that, and sometimes you might decide, hey, maybe I don't necessarily really want to go to the magazine rack right now, but I assume other players are going to. So I can do basically one action for my turn and then get that bump action and get an extra magazine. Kind of cool. I like that. I like those bump actions as well. All in all, I think this is a lot of fun. The gang enjoyed it. I actually even played it with my mom, amazingly enough. And I was like, okay, my mom doesn't play like real heavy games. They have to be fairly rules light. And she understood how to play it too. Took a little while, right? And like anything else, like everybody, it does take, a little bit of time to kind of understand the basics of the game. But once you got it, it's done. It does move along pretty quickly as well. Don't be scared off by all the cards that are in this record bin here that you have to go through to end the game, because these albums are going to be zipping out of there left and right. Also, keep in mind, you don't have to have all of the albums in people's collections. Just have this empty. So you can still have plenty of albums out on the game board when the game comes to an end. All right. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I certainly give Vinyl a very solid 8.5 out of 10. I enjoyed it that much. I will mention once again that if you're not like an audiophile, you're not into, the concept of albums and vinyl collecting and things like that, and you're not into set collecting, this probably isn't gonna be for you. But for many of us out there, I think this is a very cool game to add to your collection. All right, so if you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. If you do subscribe, ding that bell, because it will not only let you know when I upload videos such as this, it'll also tell you when my live stream, The Daily Dope, airs Monday through Thursdays right here on YouTube as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news. All right, so as I wrap up all my videos during this never-ending pandemic that just is getting worse, here is hoping that all of you out there are being smart and staying safe. Oh, you're still here. Well, once again, thank you very much for watching this video. And of course, if you'd like to subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel, click right here. And of course, if you want to see one of the latest episodes of the Daily Dope, click right on up here. And if you want to roll the dice, take your chances, see what YouTube thinks you might like from the channel, give a click right here. Once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and I'll see you next time.